Hey everybody, Jason from iAnimate here. How's everybody doing? Hopefully you're all doing fantastic. In this week's snippet, we're going to talk about weight in relation to characters. So one of the very first movies that I remember seeing a character animated with huge scale was in Disney's Pinocchio, and especially the Monstro, the whale character. There was some shots in there, and I want you guys to, to look at this on YouTube if you can, where Monstro the whale is basically jumping out of the water and trying to capture Geppetto and Pinocchio on a raft, right? Like they just escaped through the mouth, and he's chasing them, like swimming quite fast, right? Like, but the scale of the character on the screen is absolutely huge, right? So what gave it that scale? I mean, obviously, like there was the whale in relation to the water, in relation to the characters. There's a huge size difference, right? And that made it feel huge. But it wasn't just that. It was just because of the way it was animated. There was a lot of energy in this character, and it didn't just go from 0 to 60 like over 2 frames. It basically built up some energy, and you really felt that the energy of the body and the tail took a while to get going. And then there was one shot in particular where you had to see this character turn around. And if it turned around like, like a normal fish, it would feel absolutely weightless. And there was one shot in there in particular, and I want you guys to really to search this out because it's absolutely amazing. It was basically where the whale, I'm not going to even pretend to be able to draw this character, but basically the whale like wasn't huge on the screen, but it was pushing all this water going this way, right? So that the character is sort of like here, right? And like this kind of a thing, right? And then this water was being pushed this way, and the character took a long time to gather its energy and turn and start to go to the opposite side. And it was in this motion right here that I felt the most amount of weight, because it really felt like the character was pushing against the water and turning itself using its energy, right? So almost like hydroplaning around, right? To use its energy to turn itself 180 degrees and then go the other way. And even from here, it cut, right? It cut to the other characters going, oh my God, the whale is coming back. But then it, like the character had to build up energy and anticipate and start to go again. And then it's in that kind of way that it's animated that really felt a lot of weight. Another character, the T-Rex, right, in Jurassic Park. It was again, one of the first movies that I saw some CG characters that had a lot of weight. So that the T-Rex, like the initial foot shot, where you just see this foot in the foreground come down, right? It was like huge, right? And you felt the mud in relation to the character's foot, spread out, and you felt like all this weight coming down this way and all this sort of muscle and everything else sort of spread out. That felt huge to me, right? And even the Brontosaurus or the Brachiosaurus, I'm not really 100% sure which one it was, but the initial shot where you saw the character walk in, right? Almost it almost felt like it was in slow motion, but it was just the sheer scale of the character, and you felt all this sort of secondary jiggle on the muscles and everything, and it was just so well animated. Like, it really felt like this foot was working like a pillar that the character could actually go over, right? It wasn't like that it was bending its legs super uh, like this, because it couldn't possibly do that. It's almost like an elephant. Like, it's almost like the foot had to come down, right? And then sort of like pillar upwards, whoop, to get to the next leg, right? And then in that like impact, like you felt the muscles spread out, right? And then the muscles kind of secondary shaking, right? Like around, like the body was shaking, everything was shaking, and it felt absolutely huge, right? Now, that's massive characters. They're gigantic dinosaur type characters, right? But what about just regular characters like us? So when I'm thinking about just adding weight to a normal character, it's not just about um, making it feel in slow motion. It really isn't, or slowing down the action. It's not really about that. It's just about like the follow through, like the anticipation, the action, and then what happens afterwards that I look for, right? So if I'm just doing a gesture like this, right? Like I'm feeling like my arm if I just kind of and forced it to stop, it would suddenly feel like there was no weight to that arm, right? What happens naturally is you have the anticipation, you have the gesture, and then you have the follow through. And it's in the follow through that gives you that little bit of weight, right? That boom, right? That kind of. So when I'm thinking about adding weight to my character, I'm thinking about the action that I'm going to do. Then I'm thinking about how much energy is it going to take to do that action, and then what happens after the action. So in that way, you start to think about the weight of the character, and then think about the weight of the hand, the weight of the fingers, the weight of the forearm, the weight of the bicep, the shoulder, the body. Like, and how much difference can you make that feel to give it that little bit of weight? So usually, like with fingers, they'll have a faster settle on them, but they will actually, react to the movement that you're doing with your hand, right? So it's not like, I mean, if you have a closed fist, you got tension, but if you have the fingers open, they'll have a little bit of flop to them, right? So the way I'm feeling about weight is I'm thinking about, if I'm just doing that gesture, right? I'm thinking about the shoulder. I'm thinking about the overlapping actions of the shoulder first, then the successive breaking of joints, right? The forearm, and then the wrist, and then the fingers. So all in succession. And then like the last thing will settle will be the fingers, right? So you have a little bit of settle on the fingers. And then when I'm breaking up the weight of the fingers, I'm thinking about how does the hand open naturally and how does it close naturally. Usually I open index finger first, then I open this way. But closing, I don't go this way because that I mean, if you actually even try that, it actually feels kind of sore up here, right? It feels like something's not quite natural about it. But if you close with the pinky first, that way you get that nice overlapping action happening through the fingers. So thinking about the weight again. So think about the scale of your character, the staging of the character. So if you want the character to feel huge, then stage it so that you're a little lower, and then have it in relation to other things. So if you're doing a huge dinosaur, having it in relation to buildings or cars or people will help with that scale. But don't just animate it in slow motion. Think about just how much energy will it take for that character to get going, right? And then what's the aftermath? What's the settle? Like, how does it take the weight? Does it take the weight like a pillar, or does it bend the knee and really take the weight this way? So think about the scale of the character in that way. And then for normal characters, then think about the follow through. Like, we're not going to have like slow motion characters doing this all the time, right? Because it'll start to feel like it's underwater. But think about the anticipation, the action, and the follow through. All right. All the very best, you guys. Take care. Bye.